The views and opinions expressed on this program do not necessarily reflect or represent the views and opinions of 580 WCHS or West Virginia Radio Corporation.
And a very pleasant good morning to you. You're listening to Ask the Expert, WCHS, the voice of Charleston. I'm Dale Cooper. Thank you so much for tuning in. And I tell you what, it is a gorgeous, a beautiful, a wonderful Wednesday morning. It's a Wednesday morning, and you're listening to the radio. It's Ask the Expert. I'm Dale Cooper, and I am just here to provide a resource in order to get you to talk to our guest this morning. Is Dr. Ann Maurer. She is from WVU Physicians of Charleston and working at the CAMC facility. Dr. Maurer, good morning. How are you doing this morning?
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for coming in. We've already had a spirited discussion before going on the air this morning, so I'm really looking forward to this show today. But take just a moment before we tell folks our topic and what we're going to be talking about. Take just a moment to introduce yourself, where you work, and a little bit of your background.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
My name's Ann Maurer. I live here in Charleston. I work for WVU Physicians of Charleston, and I am based at the Charleston Area Medical Center. I work in the family medicine residency program there.
So there's probably other listeners out there that do. When you're distinguishing between different types of practices, and we're talking about family doctors, what does that encompass?
That's a great question, and I'm happy
good.
to answer that. Family doctors take care of patients from the very youngest patients to the very oldest. We see prenatal patients, so patients who are not even yet born. We see small children. We see teenagers, moms, dads, other adults, and we love to see our elderly patients as well.
So when somebody talks about their primary care physician or their family doctor, a lot of times those could be the same thing, right?
That's right. Primary care physicians can be family doctors, internal medicine physicians, even OBGYN physicians, and pediatricians, our pediatrics friends, provide primary care to patients. Family doctors are the only doctors, though, who see patients across the lifespan and of both genders, male and female.
Well, one thing that is probably fairly common to people, and I had this issue when I moved back to West Virginia. It was a while before I settled on a family doctor. I mean, I bounced around a little bit. I would make an appointment with somebody. I would go, and it'd be okay, but I didn't really feel engaged in the relationship. And then I would try somebody else the next time I would get a checkup or whatever it was, until I finally settled on one. And settling on one doctor is really important to have that kind of relationship, so you can build a little bit of depth of history there. So when you do have something that comes up, they know a little something about you to be able to help you out.
That's so right. And it's rewarding on both ends. You know, we love to see our patients. When I see my own patients in the office, it's like a family reunion. I'm happy to see you. And you're right, knowing someone across their lifespan, knowing what they look like when they're feeling well as knowing what they look like when they're feeling sick, really helps us to direct your care and help guide our patients to good health, which is our ultimate goal.
That's really a fantastic point. And with that being said, if you're out there this morning, maybe you've just moved to the area, or your doctor's retired. We're seeing a lot of that happening around the area, and you're looking maybe to make a change or to finally find yourself a family practice, you can call for more information and appointments. The number is 304-388-4600, 304-388-4600. Where are you located at, Dr. Maurer?
We are in Kanawha City. We are at Memorial Hospital in the Heart and Vascular Center on the 5th floor, and we'd love to have you.
You're my neighbor. I live over in Kanawha City as well. So once again, that phone number is 304-388-4600. Now, this morning we are going to primarily be talking about quitting smoking cessation. In West Virginia, and we'll get into these numbers a little bit later on, like we've talked about with opioid addiction in the area, with obesity and different things along those lines, smoking is a huge issue in West Virginia. And I've lived in other states. I've lived in other states up until 2010. Most of my adult life I lived across the country, and I can tell you, just from a perspective of looking around, you can tell the difference between the amount of people that are outside, gathered in smokers areas, the folks that are, the big thing to me is when you're at a stoplight and you're 3 or 4 cars back, it seems like every car ahead of you has smoke billowing out of their windows. That's not something I saw in other states. It just was not a common occurrence. So we're going to be talking about that this morning, some of the practices that can help you quit, the contacts that you need to make, some other resources that are available. If this is something that is close to your heart, or a family member, maybe you need some help in talking to a family member and because it's tough when you try to push somebody into a direction. Sometimes they give you push back. So you need to find a way to have that conversation, maybe without raising the hackles of that loved one or a family member. Anything like that you have questions about this morning, you can give us a call. Our number is 304-345-5858, 304-345-5858, and you can talk to Dr. Mary Ann Maurer about quitting smoking. So let's get into kind of the ugly numbers of it. First of all, let's talk about, we'll talk about the benefits of quitting smoking in just a moment. But as far as the things that can happen to you if you are a smoker, what lifetime or however it works out, I mean, the number of diseases and things that you're susceptible to is incredible. I mean, cancer is the thing that everyone talks about, emphysema, different stuff like that. But what are some of the things that we see here in West Virginia that's a direct correlation with smoking?
That's a great question. We are so passionate about helping our patients to quit smoking and to move toward better health because of the health ramifications of smoking. Certainly cancers, lung cancers, head and neck cancers, throat cancers are an issue for patients. We also see so much COPD or emphysema. Most of the people listening today know at least one person who's been touched by emphysema, which is a really awful disease. We know that smoking also leads to changes in the vessels of a person's heart, increasing their risk of a heart attack, and the vessels at their brain, increasing their risk of a stroke. All of those things can have devastating effects for a person and can really change the course of their life. As family doctors, as primary care doctors, and as preventive physicians, we want to stop this before it happens. We want people to feel great. We want them to live long, healthy, happy lives.
In West Virginia, the effect of this, when we talk about, we have so many challenges in the state anyway when it comes to poverty, to culture, and then healthcare, folks having healthcare, different things along those lines. That may even be, for a lot of people, in jeopardy coming up very soon. It's kind of a dangerous thing in West Virginia where we keep pushing the envelope on our unhealthy habits without a real net of health. I mean, obviously the health providers are there, but as far as being able to pay for it and to have access to it in some of our rural communities, that's a real challenge that we have here, and we keep on pushing our chips to the middle of the table with this. Smoking has reduced some here, but it hasn't reduced over what it is nationally. I think that we looked up some numbers before we went on the air, just with teenagers in high school that have smoked recently is almost falling into the single digits. It's right at 10 or 11%. However, in West Virginia, it's up closer to 20%, 18, 19%, depending on if you're male and female. That's a real problem. It's a communication issue in part. Where do we start as far as educating our youngsters and also their parents and grandparents to try to start to get this culture moving in the right direction?
That's a great question. Before we went on the air, we were talking about just stopping before it even starts. We know that folks who start to smoke before they become teenagers or as young teenagers often have a harder time quitting smoking. It's not impossible, but it can be more difficult. Those brains, those children's brains are still growing and changing so much that kind of cementing that addiction to nicotine really makes some changes that can be harder to overcome. So having kids, talking to kids, making sure that they never start smoking. The American Academy of Family Physicians, or AAFP, does have a program called TAR Wars, where we go into schools and we talk about not ever starting smoking.
And really, that's the easiest way to keep from being addicted is never to get addicted. I mean that's really the truth of the matter, but it's not meant to be glib in any way. That's the kind of information that we need to get out to folks, because you have rural communities or urban communities. I mean, just about anywhere, but you really see it in some of our poor areas where you see a lot of poverty and stuff like that. Bad habits are part of the culture, unfortunately, whether it's obesity and fast food and not eating well because, mom and dad both have to work and, the kids have to fend for themselves for dinner. And so they order pizza or get McDonald's or whatever it might be, all the way to, grandpa smokes, mom smokes. Johnny, when he's 10 years old, is out fishing with his grandpa, and his grandpa's like, "Here you go, take a hit off." I mean, to him, culturally, that's just something they've done for their entire life. Maybe generationally, it goes back to his grandpa, and so on and so forth. We have to break that somewhere. Mm-hmm. We have to break it somewhere. Somebody has to take the responsibility to not forward that, to give that path of being okay, because at some point or another, chances are a child has been given a path either by a peer or by a parent or an adult that the path to smoking is okay, that it's an okay thing to do.
What I love that you're talking about is kind of looking at the why people start to smoke. And one of the things you touched on is stress. To break it down very simply, when our brains are stressed, they want relief.
Mm-hmm.
Brains want relief, and we get relief in lots of different ways. We can eat some chocolate, we can go for a walk, we can sit in the sun, we can talk to a friend, we can smoke a cigarette. All of those things give our brains relief. Some of them are healthier than others. The other thing that you touched on, too, is the social side of things, that sometimes people will use smoking as a way to connect socially. We see that in folks who go out on a smoke break, you hear me, at lunchtime or mid-morning or mid-afternoon. That's a social piece. So as a way to help people to either not start smoking or to quit smoking, we need to address those background factors, address the stressors in their life, and help people find healthier ways to manage that. Address the need for social connection, and also find healthier ways for people to do that. It's a great point.
There was an offhanded comment that a young lady that I knew years and years ago made to me about why she smoked. And she meant it to be a cigarette, and she wanted to see the guys come over with their lighter and offer to light her cigarette. I mean, it was just that one social interaction that made her feel better for that one moment, because there might be 3 or 4 guys jumping at the opportunity to light her cigarette for her. What a strange reason to want to smoke. I mean, that's really very odd. And maybe that wasn't her underlying reason. Maybe it wasn't the reason that she continued to smoke. But if she made the joke, it obviously was on her mind in some way, shape, or form, right?
Yeah, it's so true. As humans, we want to be connected. It's interesting that she chose that as her way to connect. But if she were my patient, as her family doctor, we would explore other ways that she could connect with people that did not involve a cigarette.
Yeah, very true. So we've talked about some of the doom and gloom, and it's all real. The doom and gloom is absolutely real. But we also like to bring a little bit of the pathway to get past that. And that's what we want to talk about a little bit this morning as well. We want to talk about the ways that we can get past smoking and seek out help. So let's talk about if that person that I was addressing out there earlier, who maybe has dealt with this problem in their own life, either with themselves or with a loved one, and they want to get on that path. They want to make that first phone call to figure out what they do. Can they call your office directly? Can they just say, hey, I need to come in and start talking about how I can stop smoking? Sure.
We would love to see patients who are interested in quitting smoking. That's something about which we're really passionate.
And so that phone number is 304-388-4600, 304-388-4600. If this is something that's weighing on you, you want to make that phone call and get started. I mean, you have to make the first step somewhere, and this might be the opportunity for you to make that first step. So let's talk about a little bit what they would experience, what someone would experience who's been battling this addiction with smoking for however long it may be. They make the phone call, they come in and see a doctor for the first time. What's going to be some of the first questions you ask and the first information that they should be ready to reveal and to consider about themselves?
Well, I'd want to know when you started smoking. I'd also want to know if you've ever tried to quit smoking before. Knowing how you've tried to quit smoking before and how many times you've tried to quit smoking before is helpful to us. We always like to explore what worked for you the first time, even if the first time only lasted 2 or 3 days. Learning a little bit about what helped you stay quit for those 2 or 3 days can be really helpful. Often people feel a little bit of shame, or they express some shame that they quit smoking and then started again. We know that it often takes several attempts before someone is able to quit permanently. And so we want to hear about that kind of thing. In fact, it's good practice for your brain to try to quit. Even if you try to quit for a day or 2 days or 3 days, you're training your brain in that way. We talked before we went on the air. If you were going to go out and run a marathon or a half marathon, you wouldn't just walk out your front door, lace up your shoes, and run 13 miles. You'd start out by walking around your neighborhood.
I love that analogy. That really makes a lot of sense. And for the people out there that have tried and failed, this gives you, don't look at it as failure, look at it as training. I mean, right. You have to look at it as a way, a boxer who gets his bell ring in the ring when he's training to get into a fight. He didn't lose the fight. He just, got his bell ring while he was training to go to the fight. So you have to keep on training and get yourself there. I find that what you say there to be very, optimistic, because if you look at it, and you can design it to not be a permanent stop, I guess. One of the things you can do is, we talked about taking temporary breaks. So, okay, it's Wednesday, I'm going to stop smoking until Saturday, So after you make it to that point, even if in your mind you're like, okay, I can start smoking again or whatever, eventually if you train yourself to do that and maybe push it out a little bit, I would imagine what happens is it becomes easier and easier to go from 2 days to 3 days, from 3 days to 4 days, from 4 days to maybe 4.5 days. Now this time I can't make it, maybe only 3 days, but then you push it by, you train yourself to eventually get to that point, and it's a lot easier to see those as 3-day successes rather than trying to quit and it being a failure after 3 days.
That's right. We're often harder on ourselves than we are on our friends. So having that positive self-talk that you're talking about can really help. If your friend were trying to quit smoking and had a slip, you wouldn't say, "You're a terrible person, you'll never do it." You'd say, "Hey, buddy, look at you. You quit smoking for a couple of days. It's okay. Get back up there. Try again." So practicing that positive self-talk can be really helpful too.
Something else that you talked about that I found to be important to relate to our audience is that everybody knows the person who, when you start talking about quitting smoking or whatever, and it's good to hear these conversations where you hear people's success stories, because different people have different ones, but you always have the person that's like, "I just quit. One day I just looked at my pack of cigarettes. I was driving down the road and I was like, I don't want this anymore. I threw it out the window, never saw another cigarette again in my whole life." That's great that they were able to do that, but as you pointed out to me, most people need a process to quit. They need something more than just quitting cold turkey, because it works for a very small percentage of people.
That's right. Cold turkey gets a lot of press, but only about 3 to 5% of people who quit cold turkey end up staying quit. So a process is important. Sometimes looking and planning backward can be really helpful. So sometimes people will quit smoking for their birthday or because they have a wedding. Some people will quit around July 4th for Independence Day,
Sure.
Smoke-free independence. And so if we know that you have a particular time in mind, we can look at that and start to plan backward from there. Okay, 2 months out from that date, what do we need to be doing? 3 months out from that date, what do we need to be doing? So that we get some supports in place for you.
It's strange. One of there was many things, but I smoked briefly in my early 20s, and one of the many things that finally got me to decide to quit. And I had a small process involved. I'm not going to get into to anything that I did because it's not important to the conversation. But the one thing that kind of triggered my desire, I guess, that really made me push to the next level, it was a random encounter with virtually a stranger. I was at a wedding. You saying the wedding reminded me of this. I was at a wedding. It was my best friend at the time. I was one of his groomsmen. And the after, when we were doing the dances, the bridesmaids and the groomsmen was paired off. And the bridesmaid that I was dancing with, she was married. She had her little daughter with her, and so we were just a polite little dance for the pictures and everything. But her daughter, I remember, said, "Mommy, this man smells fun." It was because I was a smoker at the time, and they weren't used to that. It embarrassed me so much. Maybe that's not the best reason in the world to decide that you want to quit, or ultimately one of the reasons behind it. But for me, it worked. I was like, this was a, and kids are so honest,
Yes.
and so this was a random situation, virtually with a stranger that I'd only seen once or twice before in my life. And here this kid is, raking me over the coals over that. I mean, it was in my mind. I mean, up until the point that I quit, that was one of the things that was always haunting me in the back of my mind. It was like, is this how other people perceive me? And, and as adults, we're just too polite to really get into that kind of social honesty.
It's so true. Out of the mouths of babes. Someone very near and dear to me quit smoking because his now wife said, "I'm not going to live with a smoker." And so he had a date in mind. He needed to quit by then, and he did. And he's remained quit, and they've been married for a number of years.
That's pretty incredible. I want to get a little bit more into some of the processes that you can help folks with, and exactly what they would experience when coming to your practice and continuing the journey to try to quit smoking. Before we go to our break, though, I did want to kind of lay out, in sales, we call it, you sell the sizzle, not the steak. So what I want to lay out for folks is, we've talked about all the bad things that can happen to you if you continue smoking. Let's talk about some of the good things that can happen to you if you've been a smoker and you can quit, because this is also quite startling when you look at it just from quitting from certain age benchmarks. You can significantly increase the potential length of your life and your health in general. Let's go over some of those.
Sounds great. Well, we know that there are both immediate benefits to quitting smoking and long-term benefits. The long-term benefits are incredible. We know that you can add years to your life by quitting smoking. A study came out in 2013 that was published in the New England Journal of Medicine that showed if we can get people to quit by age 40, we can reduce their risk of death from cancer, from heart disease, from stroke by 90%. They go almost back to as if they had not smoked in the first place, which is totally mind-blowing. 40 you still got a lot of life ahead of you.
That's right.
And we know, too, that it's never too late. Even if you are in your 60s and quit smoking, those smokers who quit around age 65 can add between 2 and 4 years to their life.
That's amazing when you think about it. Even if you've been smoking for that long and that late in your life, even if you quit then, you're going to make yourself, and then the domino effect of that, everything else kind of comes into place. Your health costs go down. People come to me, I'm the operations manager here as well. So I have, 30 some employees. Occasionally you get the conversation with an employee where they're asking for more money, right? I need a raise. They need a little bit of a raise. Well, if you're a smoker, I can promise you right now, I can give you like a $2,000 a year raise. Quit smoking.
It's true.
If you want to raise, quit smoking, $2,000 a year is in your pocket, because that's generally speaking with the price of cigarettes at a little over a pack a day or so. That's why you're going to cigarettes or 5 packs of cigarettes. So that for most people that have a bad problem, that's less than a week of cigarettes, and you can get a month of nicotine patches.
That's right.
I mean, the economics work, and then you're not going to need the nicotine patches for the rest of your life like you did if you're addicted to smoking. So I mean, the economics just work out in your favor in that way. So if you want to raise, stop smoking. It's a pretty easy thing to do. Let's go ahead and take our break. We need to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about the processes that Dr. Maurer can help out with and help instill with our folks that are having problems with smoking and quitting smoking. You can still give us a call this morning, 304-345-5858, 304-345-5858. Dr. Ann Maurer is our guest this morning. WVU Charleston faculty member and practicing at CAMC Family Medicine over in Canal City. You can give us a call this morning, 345-5858, and her phone number is 304-388-4600. That's 388-4600. We'll be back right after this. I'm Dale Cooper. You're listening to Ask the Expert, WCHS, the voice of Charleston.
Even just 1 inch of floodwater can cause $25,000 of damage to your home. And as floodwaters rise, so do the costs of repairing your home and replacing the things inside of it. In just hours, a flash flood or an overflowing river could destroy the life you've built. Protect it with flood insurance. Call your insurance agent or learn more at floodsmart.gov/springflooding. Brought to you by FEMA and the National Flood Insurance Program.
One night only, Sunday, April 14th, the Doobie Brothers return to the Clay Center. Come be a part of the experience, the Doobie Brothers. See one of the greatest bands in rock and roll history. Come listen to the music. The Doobie Brothers. Tickets are on sale now at the Clay Center box office. Charge by phone 304-561-3570 and online at theclaycenter.org.
Good morning. We had a disabled vehicle on I-64 eastbound Marker 58 that had one lane blocked for quite a while. That left lots of backed up traffic heading eastbound into Charleston. The vehicle has now been removed, but traffic is still congested, so use caution in the area. Traffic brought to you by City National Bank, where you can purchase or refinance your home with a no down payment mortgage. City National Bank, equal housing lender. For a convenient location close to you, log on to bank@city.com. Equal housing lender, member FDIC. This is Jeannie Kay on the Voice of Charleston, 580 WCHS.
You're listening to Ask the Expert, WCHS, the voice of Charleston. I'm Dale Cooper. Thank you so much for tuning in on this gorgeous, beautiful, wonderful Wednesday morning. In studio with me this morning, my guest is Dr. Ann Maurer. She's a WVU Physicians of Charleston faculty member practicing at CAMC over in Canal City. Family medicine. Her phone number is 304-388-4600, 304-388-4600 if you're looking for a family doctor. Also, smoking cessation. That's what we're talking about this morning, and we're going to be continuing to talk about that. for the next 15 minutes or so during the course of the rest of our program. We were talking briefly during the break. We were talking about some of the benefits before we went to the break, but there's some more immediate short-term benefits that I didn't get to that I think are pretty important. And Dr. Maurer, if you can run down some of those, because those are kind of startling too.
It's incredible. If you're able to refrain from smoking, even in 20 minutes, we start to see some of the health benefits. We know that your heart rate and your blood pressure will go down. Even if you can stop smoking for just 20 minutes, I can always tell when somebody's come to my office and they've smoked before the appointment because their blood pressure is up. So 20 minutes smoke-free drops your blood pressure, drops your heart rate. You start to come back to a more normalized set of vitals. We know in about 12 hours, the levels of carbon monoxide, a really deadly chemical, go down in your blood. They're almost gone at 12 hours. In 1 to 2 weeks or so, your sense of smell starts to come back. You'll be able to smell your shampoo. You'll be able to smell your fabric softener. You'll be
other smokers.
You'll be able to smell other smokers. That's right. And with your sense of smell also comes your sense of taste. You'll be able to taste the food that you eat. How incredible that just in 2 weeks smoke-free, you can see all of these positive changes in your body.
That's pretty amazing. And I feel it's been over 20 years since I stopped smoking, but I feel that when you start to experience some of those benefits, that just adds to the momentum of quitting. Like if you suddenly realize that you're making something for dinner and you're eating, you're like, wow, this tastes way better than it used to. Or you're out to eat with someone, or maybe you walk by somebody who had just been smoking. You're like, whoa, wait a minute, was that me?
Yeah.
Those things probably add to the positive momentum that you have, and they give you motivation to continue on your journey to stop. Even if you do relapse a little bit, you have that memory. You're like, I did feel better. And, there were these other benefits that were involved with it.
It's so true. Patients will tell us that they get less breathless bringing in their groceries, that they can take the stairs and feel okay when they get to the top of the stairs. These are all amazing things that happen.
Well, let's talk a little bit about, because the one thing that's I'm sure that must be 100% safe and there's no health drawbacks at all is vaping, right? Everybody should just be vaping right now. I'm being really sarcastic. Hopefully that comes out pretty well. But let's talk a little bit about vaping, because that is, we've actually had to address that in the building years ago. We had some employees that was like, it's just steam, because they wanted to smoke in the building. They wanted to vape in the building. I said, I'm not smoking. I'm just vaping. It's just steam. What's that going to cause? I don't know about you. I can smell it the moment that I get near somebody who's vaping. Not that there's any necessary secondhand effects. I don't know. I don't know the science behind that, but I can smell it. I can tell. And I can tell when I've walked into a room where somebody has been doing it, that I don't really care for the kind of the acrid, fruity, weird combination thing that people use. Like I can identify it right away. To me, it smells kind of like garbage, but I mean, that's me. Let's talk a little bit about vaping. In West Virginia, again, it's a huge issue.
You're so right. We were looking at some stats before we went back on the air, and we know that about 3% or so of West Virginia adults are vaping, but a much larger percentage of teenagers are vaping. Vaping is short for vaporizing. You're taking a superheated coil, applying a liquid to it, and inhaling the vapor. And while inherently it sounds like it could be safer than ingesting combustible tobacco, we just don't know. We don't know what the long-term health effects are of vaping. And you bring up another point too. A lot of the vape fluids are flavored like fruits or candies or things like that. Those appeal to children. They appeal to children and
the packaging
teenagers.
looks like candy. I mean, that's definitely true.
It's hard. We know that tobacco-containing liquid or nicotine-containing liquid that people put in vapes are really dangerous for small children. Those liquids are really avidly absorbed through the skin, and there are case reports of toxicity of children who have touched vaping liquid in large quantities and gotten nicotine poisoning.
That actually makes a lot of sense, because I'm thinking about, I have a 10-month-old daughter, And I'm thinking about her. And just the other night, I set her down. I was getting ready to feed her on the couch. I set her down, and you know she's up and she's crazy right now. She's like an octopus with those arms. And I just looked away for 1 second, and then I looked down at her, and she had a charging cable and was getting ready to put it in her mouth. I was like, "Whoa, wait a minute, no, Essie." But think about that if that's your vape pen or something along those lines. It would be very easy for them to pick up the innards of it or whatever it might be and play with it, stick it in their mouth, because kids put everything in their mouth.
Kids do. They put everything in their mouths. It's so true.
So I mean that's definitely a dangerous thing. Vape, we don't know as far as what, but most of it does contain nicotine. So at very least, maybe you're exchanging some of the health risks of the tobacco that you're combusting. Maybe it's a trade-off for the better, but you're still addicted to something. So that's never a good thing. You're not getting rid of your addiction. You're just transferring it to another method. That's not one like a nicotine patch that you're supposed to wean yourself off of and eventually stop. It's supposed to be a direct substitute. Instead of smoking, I'm going to vape and I can do it for the rest of my life. It's not good to be addicted to anything for the rest of your life.
No, it's true. And we know that, many adults who exchange cigarette smoking for vaping, if their vape pen breaks, they don't take it as a sign from the universe that they should quit altogether. They often will go back to smoking cigarettes. The other thing, too, is that nicotine patches are regulated by the Food and Drug Administration. There's rigorous testing that goes on. We just don't know about some of these vape fluids.
Right. So it's not like there's a regulation that's strict regimens that are involved with its contents or anything else as far as that goes.
We need more time and more study.
I did want to touch on just briefly when we start talking about smoking cessation, that is covered by insurance, by Medicare, right?
By West Virginia patients prefer a nicotine patch. There are 3 steps, and you can step that down to help you to come down from nicotine. There's also nicotine gum. There are nicotine candies or lozenges that will melt in your mouth to give you kind of a burst of nicotine if you're having a craving. We know those all work very, very well. There are some other prescription medications that we're always happy to talk about in the office that can help to support people to quit.
There was a friend in my life years ago who battled addictions of all kinds, from pain pills to cocaine to smoking and everything else. And with her, it was a matter of degrees on what you could battle with her. And I remember she had stopped drinking, she had stopped the cocaine and the harder drugs. She had been to recovery, but she couldn't stop smoking, which, considering everything else she was going through, she had made some progress. But she was trying to stop smoking, but her way of trying to stop smoking, she had nicotine gum that she would chew 5 or 6 pieces at a time, like just constantly. And she would smoke at the same time she was doing that a lot of times. At first she was making herself sick, then she built up a tolerance to it, and it made it all that much harder for her to quit because she wasn't really selling out for the program. She was really just finding another addiction and a way to feed that addiction rather than try to beat it. Now, she had a lot of other stuff going on in her life. It just goes to show just how difficult it is to do it without really any self-care, without any help, without any direction, which is what you can get when you go see a doctor and you do this under a physician's guidance.
You read my mind. I was just thinking she needed a great family doctor.
She checked herself out of rehab, and then she just lost it when she got out. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. We love to see patients like her. What an amazing accomplishment for her to really move into so many healthy life choices and this new healthy life. You're right. Smoking is really addictive. There are some folks who will say that quitting smoking was as difficult for them as quitting some other what we would consider to be harder addictions. But we can do it, and we've got lots and lots of tools to help.
So if somebody calls, they make an appointment with you, they come in, they reveal their history to you, you have a little bit of a discussion, and it's not like this is paint by the numbers, not one size fits all, but generally speaking, what are some of the first steps that somebody who's actively smoking and looking to quit, what are some of the first steps that you recommend that they take to continuing your program?
Mm-hmm. There are lots of different ways that we can approach it. Some people like to step down their cigarette use a little bit. So what we'll have people do is if there are 20 cigarettes in a pack, for the next few days, smoke 18, and then smoke 16, and then smoke 14, and kind of step down that way over some weeks. Once you get to about 4 cigarettes a day, that is what you're within striking distance of quitting. And when we get down there, we kind of can find what are people's favorite cigarettes of the day, because all smokers have at least one or
the morning,
2.
after meal, whatever it might be, right?
That's right. And so that's where we can use some behavioral change pieces to help to support them. If their brains signal that they've had a a delicious meal, that it's the end of a meal is to smoke a cigarette, we've got to find something else to put in there as a signal to their brain that the meal is over, that they feel satisfied. Otherwise, if they don't smoke, their brain is going to say, hey, we're missing something. So we like to find some other healthy, positive things to put in there to help retrain your brain. So
that's a fantastic point. I think I mentioned to you that when I stopped, I used a bottle of water as like kind of my oral fixation that I carried around with me and drank all the time. For me, again, I didn't have to battle through what a lot of people did, so that probably won't work for everybody. But just the idea that having something to substitute for that fixation of having that cigarette come up to your mouth. I used to be really heavy into computers, building computers, putting things together, things along those lines. And it used to be when you needed heavy processing, sometimes you'd have to wait for the processing to get done. And it was my absolute hardest thing to overcome, that when you put something together, you install some software, you write a little piece of something, and you're waiting for the software to generate the result, and it would take some time to sit back, lean back in your chair, get that cigarette, light it up, and just wait. It takes 5 minutes to do, 5 minutes to smoke a cigarette. It's perfect ratio. And that was just in my head for so long. That was a very hard habit to break, because even after I'd stopped smoking for months or even years, if I was doing a similar type task, I would have that kind of muscle memory reaction of reaching for a cigarette and lighting it. It's very hard to get past that.
You hit on that. It's true. Brains love rewards. We think about that with kids a lot, right? If you do something good at school, you get a sticker, or if you clean your room, you get a treat, that sort of thing. But as adults, we're still wired that way. We love rewards. And, if we can work with that reward pathway, your brain will be much less upset about quitting smoking, because we'll have different rewards in there. Your brain wants a reward. Your brain won't care if it's a cigarette or not. It just wants a reward.
We have about a little over a minute left for actual conversation before we have to start winding down the program. So I would just maybe if you make a plea to folks that are listening out there, like your elevator pitch to stop smoking, if you will, what would you tell that person that's out there? They're teetering on the edge, or maybe they're dialed in. They're like, I'm not going to stop smoking. I've been doing this for 60 years. Forget about it. What would you tell that person?
I would tell them it's never too late. Even if you're not ready to quit smoking now, keep it in the back of your head. It's never too late. We know that the earlier you quit, the better. If we can get you to quit by 40, we can positively impact the trajectory of your life for many, many, many years. But even if you've been smoking for 40 or 50 years, quitting smoking now will help lead you to better health. You don't have to do it by yourself. We can help you. And
I would add, not that I'm a doctor, but if you can't do it explicitly for yourself, then think about your loved ones. Maybe you want to be around for a family member or something like that. I used to be pretty grotesquely obese. I lost 140 pounds because I had a daughter that was coming pretty late in life. I'm 45. I wanted to be around and watch her age and get older and things along those lines. I was happy as a fat guy, to be honest with you, but I wanted to be around for her. I lost the weight for her benefit, and the benefits are for me too now. But I mean, that's what got me motivated, was the health for her, not for me. So maybe you have to think about that in your life. Who did you want to be around for? It's just another way to look at it.
That's right. That's right.
Dr. Maurer, thank you so much for your time today. I want to go ahead and get out more information. If anything we talked about this morning, whether it be for smoking or if you're looking for a new family practice, you can give Dr. Maurer's office a call. It's over at the CAMC building in Canal City, 304-388-4600, 304-388-4600. Dr. Mary Ann Maurer is a faculty member for WVU Physicians of Charleston, and she will be back in 2 weeks. We're going to continue a conversation, not about smoking, but about some other things that comes with health in West Virginia. But Dr. Maurer, thank you so much for your time this morning. We appreciate your expertise.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. We'll see you back here in 2 weeks.
See you.
Sounds great. Thank you so much for listening this morning to Ask the Expert. Coming up next is going to be ABC News, local news, and then former Mayor Danny Jones will take you up to a talk line with Hoppy Kirchhoff at 10:06. Have a great day, everyone. I'm Dale Cooper. You've been listening to Ask the Expert on WCHS.
580 WCHS-AM, 96.5 FM Charleston, and 104.5 FM Cross Lanes. A West and 104.5 FM Cross Lanes. A West and 104.